have to be curious and vulnerable at the same time. And sometimes we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to show our bad side or our ugly side. So we go out in the world, we dress up and we look pretty, and you're like standing there, "Oh, look at me." But inside you could be crying, depressed, not sure what's next, not sure where you're going to be next week, not sure what's going on. And we don't want to show that. We don't want to show how sad we are. We don't want to show the vulnerable side. We want everybody to think we're happy and healthy, and that's not the truth. No, because we go home and you just fall apart and you say to yourself, "I don't know how I'm going to make it through the next day." So you pick yourself up. You got to be curious about life, curious about yourself. The one thing we know that Ernest Holmes teaches us is to learn to love ourselves just as we are. We don't have to have the right car and the right house and the right clothes and the right all that stuff. You listen to TV and it will drive you crazy. Because you don't have this car, you can't be liked. You don't have that thing, you can't be liked. You don't have whatever the latest fad or whatever is going on, so you can't be liked. And so you walk out in the world going, I can't be liked. I don't have the right clothes. I don't have the right hair. I don't have the right everything. So I have to pretend I have the right stuff. But that's not what we're asking you to be. We're asking you to love yourself just as you are. Love who you are, where you came from, what your background was, because now, today, you're not that person you were years ago. You're not that vulnerable little person. You have stepped into all that you are. You have stepped into the perfection of who you are. Because we're all perfect just as we are we not? Yeah, exactly. So getting curious about classes and growing and expanding and finding different ways to see ourselves and see the world, because the world is a very curious place. It really is. Learning about different cultures and how they do things and how they live and exist and what was their beginning. Because we all don't have the same beginning. We all have a different beginning. The United States is one of the youngest countries in the world. So when you go to China or Japan or Korea or Europe, you're like, wow, we are really behind the times because they're far ahead. And being that curious person about our past and where we want to go, take a trip, be in the culture. I was stationed in Japan, and I would be on the train, and I'd get off in some place called No Burrito. It's not how you say it, but that's how I would say it. So I get off, and I'm looking around, and I'm walking through the town, and the people are so nice. They greet you. They're like, you walk into the restaurant. They're very sweet. Sumimasen, and you go in, and they treat you like you have been there all your life. That's the cool thing about being curious. How do they live? What are they eating? Some of the food, no thank you, but the rest of the food was pretty good. But that's what I love about curiosity. It's like, what is out there? There's books. Go to the library and you see thousands of books. You can't read them all, but you can be curious and satisfy that curiosity by, I'm going to try this book. I'm going to try that book. And you grow and expand with every book that you read. Everything that you do out of curiosity grows you and expands you. And that's what Ernest Holmes did. He read every book. He studied every religion. He studied everything that he could study. Then he brought it all together in our philosophy, and we learn so much about being the best of who we are, right where we are. He didn't say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have to dress in these clothes, and you have to do this, and have this job. No. If you saw him at Asilomar, you would never know he was our founding father because he was in plaid shirt, jeans, rugged shoes, and just being himself. And that's what he was teaching us to do. Just be who you are. We all have gifts. We all have something to offer. And when we step into that self of, I know what I have to give, that's your curiosity of who you are. Who am I? Because we're not the same as we were in high school. Thank goodness. Oh my gosh. Woo, that was, And we're not the same as we were in our 20s or our 30s. We constantly evolve through curiosity. Every country I went to, every place that I went to, I didn't stay in the barracks. I went out. That's what we have to do. Don't stay in your homes. Go out. There's mountains and there's trails and there's things to be curious about. There's cultures here that are not anywhere else. No two Indian tribes are the same. They all have different cultures, different things that they're doing. And so when you go and you discover this, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Then you hear their story and then you're like, this is transporting me back to something even greater. And that's what it's all about. Transporting yourself to something greater. Anybody can stay home and sit in the rocking chair and watch TV and become stagnant. But is that what we're being called to do? No. We're being called to be curious about the outside. There's plenty of time to stay home, but we want to be curious about the outside. We want to be curious about what is next, what is coming up, what is me, what do I want to do, what is it for me to do? I don't know what that is, but I trust and I surrender. And that's what Ernest is teaching us. Trust in the process. Trust in what is going to take place. Trust in that small inner voice that is saying, go to Greece because you're going to be with the love of your life. And I have found her. So we found each other because we became curious. We became curious about who we are. We became curious about what we have to say. We became curious. So it's like, okay, what's next? Let's go. And that's what you have to do is like, I want to go this place because I want to know what that's all about. I want to learn who I am in that environment. I want to learn what that is going to influence me because it will change you. Going to other cultures will change you. You will find like, oh, I can deepen my spiritual practices. I can deepen who I am. I can become more interesting to myself because it has to start here. It always starts here because you can't go to the outside to grow yourself here until you start your curiosity here and then go to the outside. That's the coolest thing that we are taught. Find our interesting part. What do we want to do? Make a bucket list. We have a big one. And and then go do it. Don't hold yourself back. There's so much to see and so much to be curious about. Go to the zoo. I mean, you think you know about the animals, and then you go and you're like, oh, that's different. Go to different places. Go to parks. Just get out and be curious about what life has to offer. Because that's what helps us grow and expand. Because we're expanding not only ourselves, but our horizons and what we have to offer and what we have to say and what we can share. That's the coolest thing. I went to this place. It was so magnificent. You have to go. And your friends are like, okay, well, let's go. Let's run off and do that. And that's what we have to do. Curious about what it is I am here to do. Curious about what am I called to do. Because our callings are constantly changing. I was called to the ministry to do this. Now it's changed. It's called to do something else. And now that's what we're doing. So just be curious about yourself. And you'll be amazed at how much you're going to grow. because that's what it's all about. Take the classes. You're like, yeah, okay, here I go. I'm taking this class again. But every time you read the Science of Mind textbook, it's different. Every single time. Something is going to catch your attention and go, oh, but didn't I just read this a couple weeks ago? And I thought I read this thing. So you have to be curious. There's paradoxes that take you places that you thought you would never go. There are things that are calling you. Answer the call. If something is calling you, you have to do that. I was watching a movie called The Book Club, the final chapter. As I walked out, Spirit spoke to me and says, you have to go to Greece because you're going to go with the love of your life. We're going to Greece. So you have to answer that call. You have to listen to that small inner voice and be curious. Because if you're not, you don't grow. You don't grow, you don't expand, you shrivel up. Who wants to do that? It's like when you don't water your flowers, what happens? They shrivel up. So we have to water ourselves with curiosity and vulnerability. You have to step out and say, I've got to try this. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says. It doesn't matter if anyone's saying, why are you doing that? Are you crazy? Absolutely. I am absolutely crazy, and I'm going to do this, and I don't care. So that's what we have to do. Just step outside of ourselves and just be one with Spirit. Spirit wants you to grow. Spirit has an unlimited supply of whatever you want to do in your life. Your abundance is not just financial. Your abundance is also love and passion and compassion and curiosity and all the different good things. It's like going to a banquet and only eating the soup. How crazy is that? Who wants to just have soup? There's so much out there to nourish our bodies and nourish our souls and nourish our minds. Keep our minds active. What is that about? What is that book about? What is this about? How do I grow this? Quit Googling it, go to the library and find it. Because that's the place you get curious. Just go and see. Go and experience. Go and find who you are in that moment. Because you are going to be changed. You go someplace, you get that experience, you come back, your life has changed. Our lives change when we get curious. Our lives change when we become vulnerable. Our lives do not stay the same. And that's what Ernest Holmes is teaching us. Don't stay the same. Who wants to be the same? We got to grow and be and go out there and see what the world has to offer. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we're like, ooh, what's that all about? Read the history book. Go and read about where their beginning is. And their beginning conflict started not yesterday, not the day before, but thousands of years ago. And they're still fighting over the same piece of land. They can't get a decision. They can't make up their minds. They can't be curious on how to find that place of peace. So we get to know for them that place of peace. We get to say, we're going to surround you with love and peace because I know that you're having a very difficult time being curious about yourselves. So that's what we get to do in our spiritual practices. You look at the news, it's not about finding out what's newsy, it's learning how to find out what goes on your prayer list. Who do I need to pray for today? That's the vulnerability we get to experience and the curiosity at the same time. So what are you curious about? What lights your fire? What makes you the most happy? What is it that you want to experience? So go out and do that. Don't stay at home. Get in the car and go for a ride. Get in the car and go be curious about whatever. That's what we have to do. And that's what Ernest Holmes calls us to do. Be curious about us and be curious about others. Because sharing love with other people is the most magnificent thing we can do. Just going to the grocery store and saying, how's your day? How are you doing? And the clerk is like, I've had a bad day and thank you for asking. You leave and you've left this sprinkle of fairy dust of love. And they're like, wow, that was a really nice lady. She asked about me. And that's what we get to do. Be curious. Ask them. Because you know they have a not so good job. Because people are yelling at them and screaming at them and stuff. So we as these spiritual beings get to say, here's your fairy dust for the day. Because I know you're feeling vulnerable. Because I'm vulnerable just saying this. Woo, okay. Is she going to get mad at me for saying? No. So take your curiosity to the next level. And just know that whatever you're curious about is all about you. Opening ourselves to the paradox, to the mindset, to play, be vulnerable, be curious, change your space, change your life. As Wayne Dyer says, change your thinking and change your life. And that is exactly what we need to do. So now we must open the doors of our consciousness and expand and expand and expand. And no longer think in terms of the backyard lot, but think in the terms of the infinite nature, in terms of the universe. The universe is your play field. It's your playground. So go be curious. Don't worry about vulnerability. Don't worry about anything else but yourselves and what you have to bring to the situation. So I want to thank you very much for having me here today, and I am so grateful. Thank you. So let's all take a collective deep breath and let it go. And as we join in that consciousness of knowing, there is one power, there is one source, there is one spirit. And the spirit is curious. And the spirit loves each and every one of us. And as we go about our day today, each of us are stepping into that curiosity, that vulnerability, that place of expansion and love and growth. And knowing that Spirit is guiding each one of us as we walk through this path, as we walk through this journey, as we walk through this life. And I simply say, thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you for this curiosity. Thank you for this vulnerability. Thank you for this expansion of who I am. Because who I am is bigger than what I can think for myself. And I simply say, thank you, Spirit. And I release these words into the law, knowing it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It is done. It is complete. And so it is.